There is a strong suggestion that the kids who have mental health conditions are using more screen time.
How many of you guys would put their hand up to say that they'd be okay if social media didn't exist at this moment in time in their world?
The Dad of Three is challenging federal leaders to raise the age limit teens can access social media from 13 to 16 years old.
We're driving everybody to 36months.com.au to sign the petition.
We need to stop having talk fests. We need action.
Anthony Albanese has today met with passionate campaigners.
Australian lawmakers have passed a bill,
A world first.
to ban children from using
Social media.
Social media is doing harm to our kids, and I'm calling time on it.
My name is Greg Atwells, Director of 36 Months. In 2024, we led a national campaign to raise the minimum age of social media from 13 to 16, the first law of its kind anywhere in the world. Now we're rebuilding the ecosystem around adolescence in politics, schools, and homes. Because healthy teens don't raise themselves. They're raised by adults brave enough to build better systems, so the next generation can grow up better, not faster. So Kirra Pendergast, your expertise spans all things online safety, cyberbullying, Gen AI, generative AI, social media risk management. You're a speaker, thought leader, writer, startup mentor, consultant and advisor, and you founded Safe on Social, an online safety education and advisory company who work with schools and other organizations.
Right.
So you have forged a career in all things tech, computers, IT, internet, social media.
That's right. My son calls me the old lady of the internet because I actually predate the internet.
Oh, wow.
In Australia, I started my career a year before we had it. And so I literally grew up with it and all of the issues that came with it. So this is why I think I've been able to kind of almost predict what's going to go wrong. As hard as that is to hear, I've seen it over and over and over again on repeat. So we saw the same problems when we first got the internet as the conversations that we're having now around security and generative AI. All of the things, it's mathematics, it's on repeat, you know.
And why Safe on Social?
Why Safe on Social? Well, that was born out of lived experience. Okay. So I'd been working, at that point, I'd been working in cybersecurity particularly for 18 years. And I had founded a company that was doing what we call e-risk reviews and things of big organisations in Queensland, advising the Queensland government. I was very, very well known. I was one of 3 women working in cybersecurity in Queensland at the time. And I had a very close friend that I used to do a lot of work with, and we had a fallout over a business decision, a pretty significant fallout. She took it upon herself to bully me so badly online that I didn't actually leave my house for 3 months. It got to the point that I checked my life insurance policy. I was 43 years old and I was living in Lennox Head at the time. The only thing that stopped me literally going worst case scenario was my 16-year-old texted me and said, "Mum, what's for dinner?" And I went home and I started Safe on Social the next day because I didn't want kids to go through what I was going through at 43. She'd created numerous accounts that looked exactly like me, blocked me from them and used them to bully herself. It was crazy what went on.
Wow.
Crazy, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So a lot of lived experience.
Yeah.
Okay. You obviously are at the coalface in many ways of what young people are experiencing in schools and homes. You mentioned, before we started recording that a lot of parents reach out to you most days with some horror stories and whatnot. As you sort of have that sort of bird's eye view across the landscape at the moment, what are some of the biggest kind of well-being risks for young people in the world today?
The need, or the perceived need, to be hyper-connected is number one for sure. Kids have got this thing in their head now that when they turn 13, they'll get their first phone and then they get their first apps and all of those things. But what I've seen over the last 11 years of working in schools, and my team and I work with more than 5,000 kids a week. You know, I do 3,000 a week on my own when I'm in Australia. So we speak to a lot of kids, and what I've seen over the last 10 years that is particularly disturbing is the rapid decline in behaviour between 11 and 14. And that clearly lines up when they're getting their first device and they're getting their first apps.
Wow.
And the conversations that they're having and the things that they're learning from, and these role models that they don't know anything about that are literally a life for hire that they subscribe to, is just extraordinary. It really is.
Yeah, we were reading recently that 40% of Australian teenagers are currently experiencing psychological distress because of loneliness. And back in 2001, that number used to be about 18%. So it's risen quite dramatically in the last 2 decades alongside the rise of social media. And I was just reflecting on the fact that in a world that has never been more digitally connected, teenagers have never been more lonely.
Yeah.
So, have you got any thoughts on, I guess, this idea that these apps, devices that were designed to help us connect are actually sort of instruments of exclusion a lot of the time? And like, have you got any thoughts on that whole idea of?
Yeah, look, you know, again, personally, I've experienced that, but I think you could also line it up with the numbers of the highest amount of school refusal that we've ever had, because there's a lot of kids that don't want to go to school because they don't want to put themselves in the firing line of all of this that happens on a daily basis. And so they retreat to their bedroom and they never come out. We've heard a lot of that since COVID, that kids do not leave their bedroom. I know a couple that have gone straight into a world of gaming and chatbot AI-based relationships. They've got virtually got synthetic friends. You know, a friend of mine's daughter sits in that category. She's now 21, barely ever leaves the house. You know, so there's all of that as well, where kids that were lonely and isolated have retreated even further into this other world where they're not getting that social interaction that they need.
Wow. How are organisations like schools, I guess, ill-equipped or underprepared to sort of manage these risks at the moment?
Well, to be really honest, a lot of schools that I go in don't even have a social media policy. They haven't got a mobile phone policy. They don't understand their own duty of care until I teach them. There's a lot of hit and miss out there. There's a lot of work to do. Some schools we go in and they're like, yes, absolutely, bring everything in you can to help us. And with my background in the tech and corporate sector, that means doing everything from doing a full e-risk review and to see what the whole school looks like online. And then we map how the education is going to be rolled out over the next 12 months. Other schools obviously can't afford that, so they'll subscribe to something that I record for them that they use all over the year. And then you have schools occasionally that come along that just want a speaker to come in and speak.
Yeah.
And it's like a tick in the box. And I'm like, we're not that company.
Yeah.
You know, you need to be actively involved, because that once a year tick, we've done that, is never going to work. This is a long-term program. We are, if there's one thing I've heard in the last couple of weeks that's literally making my brain explode, is that this was rushed legislation. Well, as someone who's been talking about this particular topic since 2008, we've
been a long time
rushed
coming.
nothing. You know? So it's like, yay. We can't keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and expect change.
Yeah.
Not going to happen.
What's the most important thing that parents can do?
Listen to their kids and create a safe space for them to speak up. A lot of kids are terrified about speaking up. And again, that's another argument that's coming up that will drive this into dark underground places. Well, it's already there and they're just not telling their parents for fear of repercussion,
Yeah.
and fear of judgment and fear of shame and things like that. It's not for fear of having their devices taken off them. It's fear of what their parents are going to think about them. And so it's creating that safe, non-judgmental space for them to speak up.
Yeah, that resonates. I have spoken to my 14-year-old daughter a lot about that, like this idea that if she comes to me and is honest about whatever's going on, that will always be met with non-judgment, because otherwise she won't come to me.
100%.
Yeah. You mentioned this before, but I will just unpack it here, just because it's a real area of interest of ours at the moment. One of the things that we're learning is that everything that's going on for a teenager will manifest itself at school. Schools are increasingly being blamed for not effectively managing the behaviour of their students online after school hours. Like the duty of care used to be from 8 till 3 every day while the kids are on site, but that's not really the case anymore, because so much of these relationships and interactions now play out online at home. It's a real headache for principals at the moment, who need to be able to demonstrate to parents that they are doing something, I guess, more proactive about online safety, teen health and wellbeing. What, in your opinion, I know that you offer programs and whatnot for schools, but what, in your opinion, can school leaders just do differently here at like a headline level?
Get engaged.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them are, in fact, I see a lot of it passed off to a deputy or a head teacher wellbeing, or in some schools I work in, and I've worked with over 800 schools. Some schools that I work in, I won't even meet the principal.
Okay.
And it needs to be a top-down approach to this, so they fully understand it. And they need to understand how duty of care works. Like a school's job is to keep a child safe when they're at school, as well as giving them a really solid, good education. But if something happens at home at 10:30 at night in the bedroom on a device that a parent has bought for a child and put no boundaries at all in place, that's a parenting boundary issue. But it also becomes the school's issue in the context that the school has to step up if it's between two students and make sure that child is safe when they're on site at school, that they're getting educated about how to help themselves, understand the technology, the well-being, all of those things. That's the school's role in duty of care. But as I said, you would be astounded if I ask, or you probably wouldn't be, but if I ask a room full of students who sleeps with their phone under their pillow or beside their bed, the whole room will put their hand up.
Yeah, wow.
There is no boundaries. It's very, very rare that there's a boundary, that the device is out of the bedroom. And 99.9% of the time, that's where the bad stuff happens.
I want to shift gears a little bit, understand you a little bit better. I'm going to call this segment When I Was 13. And I want you to cast your mind back to 13-year-old Kirra. How was your high school experience? Where were you? What were the highs, lows, and everything in between?
Okay. I can do that because it's like the first slide in every parent
Oh,
presentation.
really? Okay.
I have a kid. I've even got a photo of myself at that age as my bio slide when I'm introducing myself. I think it's important that we all reflect on that. So I'm a fourth generation Byron Bay girl.
Yeah.
I grew up the daughter of two very well-known surfers, and I was the curvy brunette in a sea full of size 8 blondes. So you can imagine what my high school experience was like. I was undiagnosed ADHD, mild autism. I didn't find out until my late 30s that was how my brain actually operated. So I was that kid that would do anything to be accepted. I say to rooms full of parents all the time, I would have been that kid that shared that photo, or I would have been that kid that piled on bullying everyone else because the cool kids were. I know I would have been that kid because that's the way that my brain worked back then, and I didn't understand it, and I couldn't self-regulate. And that's what I think is most important, that we don't forget that there's a lot of young people that just so desperately want to be accepted, and they're living in a world where either they thrive online or their self-esteem gets systematically dismantled. I would have been one of those. I was so painfully shy, not that you'd ever pick it now, that as, you know, granddaughter of staunch Irish Catholics, I made myself throw up so I didn't have to walk down the aisle to do my first communion because I was terrified of standing up in front of people. My self-esteem was that bad. So I think I cast my mind back to that all the time, to the point that my brain works in a way that I can literally have a room full of 300 kids. And because I'm so worried about holding the whole room in a way, I can, at the end of the session, say to a teacher, the girl in the back row with the blue scrunchie and her hair, look down 3 times during that particular part of the presentation. You need to check in with her because I see me around the room all the time. I made a video a couple of weeks ago where it was actually the first time in the history of my career that I've walked out of a school where the behaviour was just that bad. I just could not deal with it. My first session at 8:10 in the morning was met with hideously misogynistic commentary, stuff that I can't even repeat, being mouthed at me and hand signalled at me from a group of boys in the room. But the thing that triggered me the most was looking around a room, and this was year 7 and 8. So they were all 12 and 13 years old. I looked around the room to a sea of girls sitting cross-legged with their backpacks, arms around their backpacks, heads down, the body language. They were terrified of these group of boys. And I was looking at those girls, just seeing myself over and over and over again. And the one girl that bit at me, that caused me to literally put my microphone down and walk out crying, was that girl again. You know, it was like the one that was trying to be cool, to be in with this group of boys that were just like the hellraisers in the room. So yeah, I think that's a really important question that parents should ask themselves and really check in on how they would have handled being connected 24/7 and not to being able to escape the nasty comments. Because I know if someone rang my house at 8 o'clock at night and wanted to talk to me just to give me a hard time, they wouldn't have got through my father.
Yeah.
You know, the kids don't have that buffer. They don't even have to ring up and say, oh, hi, Bobby, is Morgana there, please? That's my best friend. And Bob would go, oh, hi, darling, how was school? What have you been doing? And I'd have to have this conversation with her for 10 minutes before I got to my friend. They don't have that anymore. They've lost that social connection and learning to have conversations and all of those things as well.
Well, and it's a moment by moment indication of whether or not they belong in their peer group.
Yes.
Which is, I'll imagine having to deal with that when you were 13 years old.
Yeah, well, I did. You know, we all had those little wobbles where you move from one group to another. I laugh about it often now because, you know, my partner and I went to high school together. We've known each other since we were 12. We didn't get together until we were 51. So it's like this weird, because now everyone, of course, sends us photos of when we were 14 together because we were friends in high school. So all of our old friends are sending us all these photos. And Laith and I are constantly going, wow, we were so different back then to what we are now.
So I'm interested, there's a couple of concepts that have always felt important to us, and that is like self-esteem, belonging and resilience, right? And so for you as a 13-year-old, how did you develop a healthy self-esteem? Like what sort of things fostered that in you at the time?
Yeah, well, I can answer that straight off the bat too, because it's been my lifelong passion. I still call it my love job. My dearly departed dad handed me a camera.
Okay.
And I got so into photography that in my last couple of years of school, that's all I did. I recreated the first Mullumbimby High School magazine since 1967 when I was at high school, and I was just so into it and everyone knew it. And then all of my friends that wanted to be models, I was doing their modelling portfolios. I was never going to be a model, but I was that person on the side of the camera, and I became really, really, really good at it to the point I shot music festivals and things like that for many, many years. I only stopped during COVID. So it was diverting that, and my self-esteem was built by the fact that my dad saw that I had an eye for that and completely 100% supported me. Even when he couldn't afford it, he was buying me film and
Wow.
getting me cameras, and that passion and tapping into that, if you see that in a child.
Yeah, seeing and resourcing that
Yeah.
that passion or that where the potential is.
Yeah. Well, I still do it at 54. I take my camera everywhere on the street in Italy doing street photography, like all the time.
Wow. And what about like you mentioned this idea that you were, you know, the curvy brunette in a sea of, I can't remember what you said, but like, you know.
Surfside coastal town, yeah.
Okay. So
not the same as everybody else.
How did you, I guess, where and how did you find belonging?
Music.
Okay. So because of your passion in photography, that opened up a door into that space, and because, you know.
Yeah, because it dragged on, and it drags through high school, and high school was punishing and relentless, and I didn't know that I had neurodiversity and couldn't, like, I wanted to be a cardiothoracic surgeon.
Okay.
But I couldn't finish an essay if my life depended on it. Because my brain would start it from 17 different directions, which works really well for me now because I write prolifically about all of this sort of stuff. But it was that point when I realised that wasn't going to happen. So I left school in year 10 and I did work experience at Channel 7 in Brisbane. And then I, again, picked up the camera, and a friend of my dad's allowed me to shoot the very first Blues Fest in Byron.
Wow.
So I was like 18 years old shooting the Blind Boys of Alabama, who are still good friends of mine now. You know, and I've shot them with Tom Jones and I've shot them with Ben Harper. And so I was just really lucky that that was nurtured not just by my parents, but the whole community in a very, because Byron was a small town back then. So it literally does take a community to help get a kid through that kind of stuff. And you've just got to help them, like, be the guardrails and nudge them into something else.
It's interesting too that your skill or your passion was the thing that opened the door to community too, you know? Yeah.
And now I have this whole other community of all my photographer friends and all my musician friends, and it just, and my love of music. When we moved to Italy, my partner didn't even have a stereo. That was the first thing I bought. I'm like, you've got to buy, you're an artist. You need to buy vinyl.
You're an artist.
And so we went from like 2 albums to 300 in a heartbeat. And now he's like totally Mr. Vinyl guy.
Okay. Wow.
So you can spread it. Yeah.
What's a core memory that still feels quite vivid to you?
Which one? In what context?
Maybe one that's really shaped the way that you show up in the world today.
In the very beginning of Safe on Social, I was doing a lot of what I call trauma bonding.
Yeah.
And that's really shaped how I show up for kids in that.
Can you just explain that a little bit, what trauma bonding?
Well, when I talk about my story, because I talk about it very openly to kids, because they need to hear it. And I'll have kids come up and say, this happened to me, and this happened to me, and this happened to me. And I've had a few that have really rocked me.
Yeah, okay.
You know, and they're like little etches that will always be there.
Yeah.
And that informs my work.
So we know that, you know, healthy connection is one of the things that helps to sort of build things like self-esteem, resilience, belonging. And we know that connection doesn't happen without intention. Like you can't drift into it. It needs to be intentional. Our premium partner, KitKat, stands for better breaks, purposeful pauses or moments to switch off without life's distractions in all their forms. In a world that has never been more digitally connected, what are some of the ways you like to take a better break?
Wow, there's a few. When I'm in Australia, it's definitely the disconnection is hanging out with my mum.
Okay.
She, up until recently, was still surfing at 77. So she's incredible. I always used to say I wanted to be her when I grew up.
She's still up in Byron?
Yeah, she's still in Byron. she's not doing too well now, and she was actually the catalyst for a really big change just last week in exactly that, an intentional change I made about how I do things. Mum's just recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and it's gone from 0 to 100, in a couple of weeks. And I found myself, because I can be on 24/7 and not cover everything that happens in this space, as you can imagine. So I found myself at one point, I was scrolling through my phone and I was answering emails, and Mum's like hanging out with a little girl at the moment, and she's like, I want to go for a swim. And I'm going, okay, Mum, I've just got to do this. I want to do this. No, I've just got to do this. And I found myself reflecting on the fact that even when my now 28-year-old son used to ask me questions, and I'd say, can you just hang on, Morgan, I'm busy. And then one day I asked him to do something. He said, sorry, Mum, I'm busy, when he was 6. And I stopped ever saying that to him again. And then I found myself on repeat. And I'm like going through my phone, putting emails that I didn't have to respond to straight away, or messages on the Safe on Social Facebook page ahead of enjoying time with my mum while I'm here. And so I immediately deleted email off my phone. So I can't unless I sit down and open up my laptop, and it's intentional that I'm checking my email now, and then I'll check it again at 4 o'clock this afternoon if I have time, and that's it. And there's a note saying that I'll get back to you within 24 hours, but I only check it a couple of times a day now.
So paying more attention to the bid to connect that's right in front of you.
Yeah, being present. Yeah. For sure.
And do you still surf?
I never did.
Oh, you never did?
I'm the non-surfer.
Okay, the non-surfer.
I love the ocean.
Yep.
As much as I can get in it, I do.
And music? What about music?
Music's my thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just like put on a record and just listen?
Or drive and sing really badly.
Oh, yeah, in the car.
When no one can hear me.
Yeah.
Music. Music is definitely a big love. Music and cooking for lots of people.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Hosting?
Yeah. I had a table specifically built so it could seat 16 people.
And do you get energy from having people in your home that way?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's that social connection. And everyone that has dinner in my home knows there's no phones at the dinner table, no matter who you are.
Yeah.
I've also got a thing in place with friends when we're out to dinner. First one to touch their phone pays.
I heard it said that extroverts see their home as a gift for others. Introverts see their home as a sanctuary for themselves. I don't know if I believe that it's tied to being an introvert or an extrovert.
It's both.
But I do know that, like, for me, I'm an introvert, and I very much see my home as a sanctuary for myself, not necessarily like a gift to others, Hosting's harder work for me than it sounds like it is for you.
Well, one of my business partners described it as neurospicy brain last night, which I love that term.
Neurospicy.
And my neurospicy brain would say that I'm an introverted extrovert.
Okay.
Because I am forced to be an extrovert because of my work.
Yep.
Public speaking, keynotes, media, all of those things all day long, and having to be a, subject matter expert and being ahead of that. But I need that downtime. I need that sanctuary in my home. It's not every day that I could have people over to dinner and be social, but you do need that time out.
Yeah. No, that's great. Every week we get questions like you do, right? And this is a little kind of thing in the podcast where we do community questions. Listeners submit them via our Instagram. And we've been getting so many in the last week about Roblox specifically, because it's considered a gaming platform. It's exempt from the new legislation. You're a bit of an expert on Roblox, so I hear. Can you help our audience understand the risks associated with that platform and what parents can do to make it safer?
Yep, absolutely. How long have we got?
Yeah. I know it's a minefield, and you've probably got programs and talks and everything on this one thing.
I'm happy to help there.
But maybe like a little teaser
Sure. Roblox is probably the most misunderstood app out there at the moment because it's what we call a metaversal game. And so parents are not sure what the metaverse even is. Like statistically, they say 83% of parents, 77% of teachers aren't kind of sure what the metaverse is. I just finished advising as part of Standards Australia's new standard that got released yesterday, a draft standard on metaversal child safety, and particularly around Roblox. So Roblox is a metaverse, and to describe that very quickly, it's a world within a world. And when I'm teaching little kids about what the metaverse is, I'll tell them, imagine if you were going to SeaWorld on the internet, you would see videos and pictures of dolphins and people on roller coasters. If you were going to SeaWorld in a metaversal game like Roblox and you had VR goggles and a suit and it was VR AR, you would feel what it's like to swim with a dolphin and feel what it's like to be on a roller coaster. And so the risk is then amplified because there's those literal touch points and things like that. So what parents don't understand about Roblox most of the time is it's not just a game. So within it is at least 40 million games within the game. So experiences. So it's the direct equivalent to a great big online recreation center where you show up to this world called Roblox and you can be whoever you want to be and you can dress yourself up.
You can build your own games too,
You can build
right?
your own games. There's incredible, there is literally a metaverse of possibilities in Roblox. But we need to mitigate the risk. And that's a really simple thing to do as a parent. I had a really horrible experience with a little girl sharing something with me that has stuck with me to the point I can still see her face when I talk about it. And she came up to me during that weird time in COVID when people like me could go on site because I was considered allied health, but parents couldn't come on site to hear me talk. So I'd speak to students, then I'd get in the car, go to the hotel, set up a Zoom, talk to the parents. And during one of those days, I was at a school in Brisbane and this little girl came up during the session right at the very end and when it happened to me, and she kept tapping herself on the chest like this, going, it happened to me, it happened to me. And I said, what, sweetheart? And she described an assault that graphically that the female principal that was standing beside me literally wobbled to the point I thought she was going to faint. And I grabbed her by the arm and I said, she's talking about her avatar on Roblox. Like this, because she thought she was talking about something that had happened in real life. And in that exact moment, it was like, wow, this is real life for kids because they cannot distinguish where their physical life ends and their digital life starts with games like Roblox.
Their avatars it's an extension of themselves.
That's right. So I immediately started thinking of ways that I could teach it better. And so it was drop the word play. We all know play is a fundamentally important part of human development, but when you put play in a game like Roblox that can normalize predatory behavior, inappropriate bullying, or like everything that play, they work around every kind of restriction that's put in it with the way that they write words and all sorts of things. So kids can be exposed to a lot. So I changed it and I said, okay, we need to drop the word play. So that's what I teach teachers and that's what I teach parents. Instead of saying you can play Roblox, just simply say you're going to. Yes, you can go to Roblox because it changes it. Because if I'm in a classroom situation and I ask a room full of kids who's been asked, and age specific, of course, because I see Roblox all the way up to teenagers that are coding it, who's been asked to be someone's boyfriend or girlfriend, most of the room will put their hand up. Who's been asked to play the mum, the dad, the doctor or the nurse? Again, hands go up. Who's seen inappropriate content? Who's blah, blah, blah. Every question you can possibly imagine. So I tell them to treat it like going to a shopping centre. And I'm like, what if your parents dropped you off out in front of a shopping centre and said, off you go, darling. You can run around in there for the next half an hour. You can dress yourself up however you want. Here's a whole heap of free Robux that you can spend in there. Do whatever you want. Someone that you don't know that might be over the age or more than likely over the age of 18 might come up and ask you to be their boyfriend or girlfriend, and that's okay. And then they might say, come downstairs and get in the car, we're going somewhere else. What would you do? And they all go, ew, I'd run. And I'm like, exactly. So let's think about that car situation, because in Roblox, if someone asks you to follow them on Snapchat or TikTok or
like
Discord, it's like getting in a car with a stranger and going somewhere else.
Wow.
And that's where it starts, 0 to 100 with that predatory behavior.
Wow.
So it's changed the way heaps of kids and parents are now talking about this, because Roblox has been fetishized massively on porn sites. If you type in Roblox sex into Google, you'll get 73 million results in 0.22 of a second. And I took it upon myself when I was presenting at a conference in London to meet with the head of online trust and safety of, let's just call it the world's largest adult entertainment website, and told them. I said, have you seen this? And they said, no. And I said, well, how can you tell me whether that's a child's avatar or not? And they said, we can't. And to their credit, they took down every possible way that you could search the term Roblox within the next 24 hours.
Okay.
Gone. So they will do it.
Yeah.
They can do it. They're just not doing it, and they need a bit of a nudge with those things to keep kids safer.
Any other big things that parents can do? So drop the word play. I really like that shopping centre analogy.
Shopping centre analogy. Get involved in your kids' gaming. Play it with them.
Okay.
I posted last night about a game called Dress to Impress.
Yep.
Yeah. And a whole stack of parents underneath saying, I didn't even know this was in Roblox, because they don't understand that there's all those games within Roblox. So it's really getting to know it. There's a lot of resources that we provide. There's education everywhere. It's just really getting actively involved with the kids' online life like you would their offline life.
I'm going to try something just because we've been talking about something pretty heavy and we're going to land the plane, but I'm going to try and lift it out into something a bit lighter.
So trust me, if you heard half of what I deal with on a weekly basis, Greg, you'd be in the corner sucking your thumb.
I don't know how this is going to go. We might end up cutting it from the recording. But we're gonna have a 30 seconds of word association tennis. All right.
Okay.
So I'm gonna say a random word. You're gonna respond with whatever pops into your mind first, and then I'll hit back with the first thing that I think of, and we'll go back and forth for 20, 30 seconds and see if we can avoid the gutter. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
Music.
Iggy Pop.
Byron.
Home.
The pass.
Home. Grew up there.
Longboard.
Dad.
Oh, Greg, which is my dad's name.
Is it?
Yeah.
Greg. Max.
Swimming.
Bliss.
Dolphins.
Sharks.
Shark Island, which is a place in Cronulla where I live. Swim around.
Shark Island?
Yeah, Shark Island. Heaps of people swim around it every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Scary.
Hopeful.
Hopeful.
Yeah, I landed there just because I think this conversation at the end of the day has actually made me hopeful, because there are people out there in the world like yourself who care enough to show up in difficult places and spaces and just shine a light and help people understand what's going on. So I really commend you for your work and your effort and the blood, sweat and tears that you've put into kind of forging the expertise that you have, and wanted to thank you for coming and chatting with us. And yeah, we're cheering you on in a massive way.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's all right.